Hello and welcome to A Seat at the Table. I'm Christine White.
And I'm Monica Pearson, and today we're talking about raising black boys into mentally and physically strong black men.
I'm Deneen Milner. 72% of black children are raised by single parents. Can a black male child really learn everything he needs to know from a woman?
Yes, Lord. I'll tell you what.
So I have daughters. I gave birth to daughters, but I have a stepson. And when he was 14, he had his boys in the hood moment. His mother sent him to live with us, and we raised him in our house from age 14 through college.
Let me know in the comments, ladies, have you ever been in a situation where your son went through this exact same thing growing up?
And first of all praises to his mother for being able to be that character. Neva, I think her name was Reva or Neva, and she dropped her son off and said, "It's your turn. I need him to be with you."
Right.
And I don't know that I would be able to send my child across the country to live with anyone. I carried this baby in my womb. So, all praises to her for having the strength to do that, but all praises to my husband for stepping up, doing what he always has done as a father, and taking on the responsibility to take this 14-year-old almost man and turn him into a man.
Because there comes a time, literally, when boys need a male influence. Because we as mothers, and I have a stepson, but he was grown when his dad and I got married, and
Let's be honest, for the most part, most boys don't have their fathers as a role model. Let me know in the comments if your son don't have their father as a role model, do they have other guys in their life that they could look up to?
I have a daughter. So raising a boy is different. It's not
Right.
something I know how to do.
Absolutely.
But I do know women who have raised children, boys on their own. And the two things I've learned very quickly from other mothers is the difference between boys and girls. Women tend to be more nurturing, and dads need to come in with the discipline. Boys, even from in the uterus, they are more active because they get more testosterone. So when they come out, they are more fidgety. They are more into everything. So you're dealing with that. And so you've got to have someone who can take control of that. And then with boys, they don't get impulse control until they're almost 21 or
Right.
older,
Right.
because that's just the way they're wired. And we as mothers want to love them and nurture them, but sometimes you just need to have somebody who can put a foot up there behind.
Well, and so,
Basically.
there's
Basically.
two
That's what it
sides of
boils
this
down to.
story, though. We're having a conversation in this country about gender and about gender fluidity and about whether or not we should be forcing children to replicate gender norms. And while I believe that every child who has an opportunity to have time with a father, it's important for them to have a father. I have also heard mothers say he would be better off not knowing his daddy. Now, I'm not sure that I believe in that either. I mean, not having a dad is just another obstacle, and anyone can overcome obstacles. But if you have an opportunity to have a mother and a father in your life, I think that it's important. And I bring up the gender norm situation just because I hear it so much. But in this world where you are treated based on the way you look and the sex that you appear to be, I think it's important, particularly for black men, to know how to carry themselves as a black man and not get shot down in the street or not get played or not get tried.
Right. And I'm speaking from experience here with a boy who came to live with us as a teenager.
Right.
He was smelling himself
Right.
with his mother. And he needed a man in his life to be able to help him walk the line between standing up for yourself,
Right.
and knowing when you need to stand down,
Right.
knowing how to get home safe, knowing how to get out of a situation where you still can be who you are as a man, but still make it home alive. And I don't know that I could teach him that. I don't know that his mother could teach him that, because we aren't treated like black boys in the
Right.
street.
No,
we
that's
are
true.
not treated like black men in the street.
Right.
Okay, let me tell you a story. I was raised by a mother, a single mother. My father was in our lives, but at nighttime when it was time to close my eyes and go to sleep, he wasn't there. I remember my mother coming to me when I was 14 years old. She pulled me to the side, away from my mother, away from my sister, away from everyone. And she told me, she said, you are at an age where you need to figure things out. So I will no longer be giving you money. You will need to figure it out. And at the time, I thought that was a little messed up. But it forced me to go out and shovel snow and rake leaves and hustle and figure out a way legally to make my own money. And I never forget I went out and shoveled snow and I made like $400 or $500 in one day. Came back, gave it to my mother, was like, here, put this on the bill or something. Now, even though she didn't take it, but the fact is, I got that lesson from her. When I turned 15, my mother came to me, same thing, pulled me to the side, and said, now I will no longer be giving you rides places. Something else you're going to have to figure out. Get on the bus, you're going to have to walk, you're going to have to figure out something. But as a man, you're going to need to figure this out because there will come times where I ain't going to be able to take you to work. You're going to have to figure it out. And I'm going to tell you right now, those two lessons right there, over everything else I've ever learned from that woman, those two mean the most to me. Tell me some lessons that your mother taught you as a single parent.
So I don't know what it means to be a black man getting stopped in a cop car, getting stopped by cops, or having another boy test me in that kind of way. And so what we needed was for him to be with his father, so that his father could show him the things that he's been through as a black man and how to navigate that. And there's no way that I could have done that.
And boys feel like they need to protect the women in their lives before they are ready to be the protection. And only another strong black male can show them the steps to take. We're going to talk some more about that in just a minute. We got to take a quick break, but when we come back, a black man will share his perspective on how to transform black boys into strong black men.
Let me see your registration now. Get out of the car! Put your hands up where I can see them now!
Listen, when I saw that on TV, Pastor Al Hollie joins us at the table. He's a youth pastor and community activist, and he was raised by a single mother and his grandmother. Pastor Al, what's your take on all of this?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you ladies on today. My take on this is being a person who was raised by a single mother who was pregnant with me as a teenager and a widowed grandmother in the city of Atlanta. I believe that black women can empower sons to be all that they can be and to grow in all that they should be. Because I had two strong black women in my lives. And I can honestly tell you the truth that because of them, I am who I am today.
How about that?
But you're also a father. You're married. You have a
Yes.
17-year-old son.
Yes.
But because you did not have your father in your life,
Yes.
how did you learn to be a father?
Well, thank you, Monica. My father went to prison when I was 5 years old. And I can remember the day that he went to prison. I can remember the day that he was arrested. And so the way I learned to be a father was to learn not to do what I witnessed him do. And in essence, I can recall one of my fondest memories growing up as a young boy. We were all in the bed with my mother in our apartment on Hollywood Road. And I never forget this. My mother was looking out the window, and there was a gentleman who would always come home every single day. And when he would come home, he would always open the door for his wife. And I remember my mother saying, man, I wish Alan would do that for me. And it was at that moment that I realized that I need to do all I can do to become a great man. And so I really learned how to be a father and a great man by watching what not to do.
Right. So, I assume that there were men around you in your neighborhood. How important is it for young men and young women without fathers to have these male roles in their lives?
It's very important because I do realize and understand that my mother and my grandmother, as strong as they were as black women, could not raise me by themselves. They could not give me everything that I needed to become the man that I have grown to become. And so for that reason, we're thankful for the coaches in the community, for the pastors who are in the community, and for uncles and all of those type of people. Because to be honest with you, when you are raised without a father being in the home, then your uncles become fathers.
Yeah.
Then,
I'm gonna tell you something that I told my cousin. My cousin has 2 young daughters and a son. And I told her, I said, as a single mother, you have to be careful of the way you carry yourself because your daughters are looking at you at how to be a woman. And then she looked at me and said, well, what about my son? I said, your son does not look at you at how to be a man. What he do is he look at you and look at everything around you. He look at, you know, how you handle things. He look at your experiences. He looks at your struggle. He looks at all the things that make you a mother, that make you a person, and he dissects on, whether he wants to be a part of that when he gets older, or do he want to figure out a way to make change. And we sat there and we had a nice conversation that lasted maybe about a good hour, maybe a little longer. And I think she kind of understood that boys look at their fathers. And when there's not a father around, then boys either look at the next best thing, a male role model, or they look at the bigger picture that their mother is currently in. Tell me your thoughts about that in the comments.
big cousins become father. Anybody who's a man becomes a father figure. And so eventually we become like what we see. And so we get a chance to see that in growing up.
So, Reverend Hollie, the big question for me becomes when you talk about us living in a mobile society, there may not be men in your neighborhood that you know or that you can trust that you want to work with your son. And there are a lot of single moms who are still having to raise their son. You talked about your grandmother saying, he needs to respect women by opening the doors.
Yes.
What are the kinds of things you set for your son? Because most men growing up know to be the breadwinner and to be protective. And the women are, quote unquote, the nurturers. But what else is it important for a father to do so that that boy can open up to him? Unlike the young man in the video that we just saw, he didn't tell his dad until much later.
Well, I think it's important for a father to instill in his son or daughter a sense of identity, a sense of pride, a sense of who they are, what they represent, where they come from, and where they're going. I feel like if you don't instill that in your son or your daughter, then a lot of times they can get lost in the shuffle. So I would say to those mothers who may be out there and you may not have an uncle around or you may not have, a coach or anything like that, I would say to continue just to love your son, continue to love your daughter like never before, and pour into them all that you can, because as much as you pour into them, that is what's going to come out of them.
So it means, how do you teach them to make good choices? Because for boys, impulse comes first.
Right.
But how do you teach them to make good choices?
I think you teach them to make good choices one step at a time, one decision at a time. My son, we always had this old adage that good choices, good consequences, great choices, great consequences, bad choices, bad consequences. So from a very young age, we always talked about the power of a choice, because every day, whatever decisions you make can determine if you get a chance to make another decision. And so what I believe is that you can always instill in your children on the power of choice every single day, because that's going to be the deciding factor.
Well, when you talk about choices, that means when, as a black male, you get stopped by a police officer, and I know you have been stopped. How do you teach your son, and how did you handle it?
I've always taught my son this one thing. If you're ever stopped by the police, always be obedient so you can tell your side of the story. always listen and be respectful because you get a chance to do it again. I can tell you this one instance where my son and I were actually driving in the car together and we actually were stopped by the police. And it happened at an event. My son was listening to some music that I didn't want him listening to. And so it just so happened on my way home, I had seen a crime scene. And I seen this crime scene. So I put my son in the car and we drove up to the crime scene about a few blocks away from it just to show him, because I wanted to show him, like, if you digest certain things inside of you, what comes out and what type of behavior that it leads to.
Right.
And I never forget, when we left the scene on our way back home, we got pulled over by the police officer who had came from that crime scene. And he asked me, did I have anything to do with that crime scene back there? Now, the crazy part about it was he came to the car with his gun and asked us to put our hands outside of the window and all that type of stuff. Here I am, a University of Alabama alumni graduate, tag on the back of my car and things of that nature, suit, bow tie on, coming home from work. You know I didn't have anything to do with that crime scene, but he pulled me over. But I think I demonstrated in front of my son that day the best way to handle yourself when you get stopped by the cops is just be obedient so you can live to tell your side of the story.
Well, I can
When I was last pulled over by the police, the first thing I did was took my hands and I made sure that they was visible so they could see them on the dashboard. The police officer go tell me, "Oh, you don't have to put your hands right there. You can put them down." I said, "No, I'm gonna leave them right here." He looked right at me, right in my face, and laughed as if it was a joke. Crazy.
tell you, my husband has been in law enforcement for over 30 years, and he gets stopped.
Wow.
And he does exactly what you said.
Wow.
He will tell the officer, I'm going to get my license. He keeps his hands on the wheel. He does everything properly.
Yes.
Because he said, if you don't, it can end up, for a black male, costing you your life.
My husband wrote a book called Justice While Black, and it's about it's written specifically for teenagers. And
if you're interested in this book, I will make sure that is linked in the description box below or attached to the screen.
Their families, so that you know what your rights are when you get pulled over and how to get home so that you can tell the story later. That's exactly what it is.
Right.
Yes.
But, you know, he's taught the book in schools, and kids right now feel like, you know, they're very outspoken, very boisterous. They feel like they have the right to their right to mouth off, and to them it doesn't feel like mouthing off. It's just standing up for myself. Well, baby, there's a way to stand up for yourself.
Exactly.
At that point, when he has his hand on a holster, is not that point.
Exactly.
And so, you know, thank goodness that you were able to show your son by example how to handle it.
You know what I've noticed is that a lot of young men who are raised by single mothers don't know how to treat women.
Yeah.
And I think that's as a result of not seeing their mother being treated a certain way, and maybe even some of the negative stereotypes that mothers pass down to their sons about women. What have you taught your son about women and how to treat women?
Well, the first thing I taught my son about how to treat women was to watch the way I treat his mother. And if he can observe the way I treat his mother, then he'll know how to treat a woman. Because I learned at a very young age that my mother used to always tell me, she used to always say, if you have to put your hands on a woman, if you have to disrespect a woman, then you don't need to be with that woman. And I say that because I can remember being a little boy, 5 years old, seeing my mother and my father fight. I can remember seeing them. I can remember seeing my mother being choked and begging my father to let her breathe and things of that nature. And so I can remember seeing the tears that she shed. And so inside of me was always a point where I never wanted to see my wife cry. I never wanted to make my mother cry. And so my whole thing was to show my son how to treat a woman by the way I treated his mother. And he would always get it right.
And that also, you know, a good father also helps a girl determine the kind of man she will marry. Because she can see that loving, caring, protective, supporting nature in that man. But then boys do tend to rear up.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so how does a mom, because we do have a lot of women raising sons on their own, how does a mom deal with a boy who's smelling himself?
Ooh, let me tell you a story about that. I would never forget 1988. I was 8 years old. I came in the house. I'm feeling myself. I don't remember the exact situation, but I'm getting loud with my mother. And I've been doing all these push-ups. So I feel like I'm stronger than my mother and everything. And now mind you, my father was in the house at this time. But I'm just feel like, you know, that I'm big and I'm bad and I'm tough. My mother grabbed me, snatched me up, slammed me down onto the floor, hemmed me up, held me down, and let me know that she brought me in this world and she would take me out. That changed my entire life. Not only it was more or less the fact of knowing that everything that I thought I wasn't.
And I think that's the $1 million question, Monica, because as a man, when I see my son, buck up, it was kind of a sense of relief. And I would say that because you don't want to raise a son or a young man who would be somewhat timid in this world,
Right.
or who would allow anybody to treat them any type of way.
Right.
And so at the first sign of bucking up, it's kind of like a relief, like, hey, okay, we got some testosterone going. We got a man here, like he's not just going to settle for anything and take anything. But that's a right way to raise up and a wrong way to raise up. And so what I would say to any mother out there who has a son who is raising up in the wrong way, I would say to her, to love your son, but to also discipline him in the way that would show him the respect that needs to be displayed for a woman. And I would also say that, find men, positive men, coaches, youth pastors, in ministries and things of that nature to put your son around so that he can see how to handle certain situations. Because I think when children or sons buck up, it's all because they're trying to find their way and trying to get their voice heard, coming into their own worldview. And so that's what it's really all about. I'm trying to become my own man.
That's so funny because I always remember my father, my nieces and nephews' grandfather, lowering his voice when he talked to the boys. Like, I'd never heard my dad's voice. He has 2 girls. I've never heard his voice get that deep. But he was very aware that for the first time he had an opportunity to influence a male child who was his blood. Yeah. And when he talked to that male child, it was completely different than when he talked to me, which, I think is appropriate, but it was weird to hear him have to put that bass in his voice and have to kind of buck at a baby like
Right.
But you have to start that way.
Yeah. You have to because men are wired differently.
Lord, yes.
We we understand authority, but a lot of times we also buck against authority.
Right.
And so as a man, you have to display authority in order to receive respect. Does that make sense to you what I'm saying?
I've never heard it put that way, but yes, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
This isn't just a conversation for or a condition of single moms.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Like, you can be in a 2-parent household
Exactly.
and have those kinds of challenges, right?
Exactly. I can recall when I was teaching, I could always tell the children who came from a single-parent household and the children who came from a 2-parent household.
What was evident? What was evident?
It was always evident in first of all, their behavior. The second thing was evident in their response to discipline. Whenever I seen a young man who came from a 2-parent household, his response to discipline would be totally okay. Like, I've been disciplined before.
Right.
But whenever you do it for a child that comes from a single-parent household, they would always tend to buck up. They would always tend to, get mad and get angry because they're not used to being disciplined by a man. And so I could always tell by that way.
Wow.
That's the reason why I've always liked to see male elementary school teachers.
Yes.
Because when I was reading in the Atlanta public schools, oftentimes the boys, even in the 1st grade, were already trying the female teachers.
Well, I've seen this happen, and I've seen it even amongst my daughter's friends that, going to a primarily white school, that these young black men, they not imitate, but they act this very similar to the white men or white young men in their grade, and it frightens me to death because I see them smelling themselves. I see them sort of with this swagger that is reflective of white privilege that they've sort of been picking up on, and I know that you try the same thing that this young white man tries, they will put you under the jail. You talk to that young white woman the same way that another white man talks to her, they will
put you out of school.
Put you out.
Or understand that, when you walk into a workplace, you're going to have to work 3
Twice
times as hard
Right.
as your white male counterpart in order to get just half of what he has.
And it's so important that our young men understand that the privileges that are allowed for white men don't necessarily apply to them. Now, it's hard to teach that and also teach pride and also teach confidence. You know?
Well, this gets me to a historical fact that I think we need to deal with. Do you think, or how will we ever get over what was done to us in slavery? Because remember, men were used basically for breeding. Women were used basically for breeding. Fathers were not allowed to take care of their children. Mothers, in most instances, saw their children given away. So you never had, except in very small instances, what is called a family.
Yes.
So how do we get past this?
Well, in my opinion, the way that we get past it is to get the system to stop stomping on us like we're still in that system, like we're still in the middle of all of the different, things that were done to us. If you still have an educational system that disciplines black boys and girls differently from white boys and girls, if you have a social system, the prison system is treating black folks differently from the way that they treat white folks, it's kind of hard to act differently when you're being treated the same way.
Well, let me mention something to you very quickly. My husband is Deputy Director of Residential Services for the Georgia Department of Juvenile Justice. He says the majority of the children who are in that system are boys. They are black boys, and the majority of them come from single-parent, female-run households.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have to say thank you for, we opened this conversation with me saying, I don't know that I could raise a black boy. And I did. I helped to raise a black boy. But I love what you had to say about making it so that you understand that you do have those resources in your community. There are pastors like you. There are teachers out there. There are coaches out there who care deeply for our children, and that the resources are there if we reach out to tap into them. And as black women, the one thing we know how to do is tap into our resources, right? And so
Amen to
I
that.
appreciate you for saying that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And my thought, I guess, my final thought on this would be is simply what the 100 Black Men of America has as their slogan.
Yes.
And they say simply, what they see is what they'll be.
That's right.
So it's incumbent upon us to make sure our black boys are involved with organizations and black men that they want to emulate.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And what I would simply say to every mother out here who may be raising a single child by yourself, you are not in it alone. I know it may appear that you're in it alone, but you're not in it alone. And I want you to know that if you be not weary and well doing, in due season you'll reap if you faint not. So whatever you do, don't
Preach.
give up.
Preach.
Don't give up.
Here we
Don't
go.
give up. I promise you.
Yeah, and I know that it's our responsibility. I mean, it takes a village. That is more than just an adage or a saying. And we got to figure out how we can incorporate all of our children all around us. My aunt used to say, if there is a child in need in your vicinity, then your responsibility is to help that child. And so we have to live by that and teach that.
Absolutely. I want to thank you, Pastor Hollie,
Thank
for
you.
joining
Thank
us
you.
here at
Thank
the
you
seat
so
at the
much.
table. You
Thank
were
you for having me.
spectacular.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Thank
We
you.
have
I feel like I don't have nothing more else to say, but I just want you to tell me your thoughts about what I said in this video. Tell me your thoughts about the video itself, and be sure to like, share, watch more videos, and subscribe to the channel.